The year is 2017. The Nintendo Switch took the world by storm. Nier Automata defined a generation of robot gooners. Fortnite created the best or worst game mode of all time, depending on who you ask. And most importantly for this video, Phantasy Star Online 2 celebrated its 5th anniversary. PSO2 was always planned to be a 10-year journey. Episode 4 was a great time for the franchise. The Final Fantasy XIV collaboration was a smashing success. The tie-in anime brought many new players to the game, and the PS4 version introduced a much-needed graphical update and overall playability improvements. But now that the game was reaching its halfway point, it was time to prepare for the future. After all, nothing lasts forever, and PSO2 was no exception. Or was it? Hello, I'm Kathy. I'll be your tour guide from the underworld, navigating you through the timeline of events. You may have noticed already, but I really love PSO2. In fact, 2017 was the year where I got really hooked on it, and the game has had a really special place in my heart since then. Back in the day, I was unaware of a lot of things that I'm going to talk about in this video, but I think I did a pretty good job with my research and can present you a timeline of events that is as accurate and objective as possible. If you like videos like these, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Otherwise, YouTube won't notify you about my new uploads. Alright, without further ado, please enjoy the video!
Regarding development, I will answer based on what I heard from the development team in advance. The project started in 2017 before I was involved with NGS. We wanted to continue the service while making the most of the avatar items and equipment of our users who have been playing for 9 long years. Also, we thought that if we were to provide services for 2 titles in parallel, like PSO2 and PSO3, our users might be split up, so we decided to roll out a major update instead.
Remember FIFA Ultimate Team? Well, it's called EA Sports FC these days. Anyway, this game mode relies on microtransactions for progression. You buy card packs and build your ultimate team from the players you've obtained, hence the name. Since the game is a yearly release, however, your microtransactions go to waste on a yearly basis. Nothing carries over. Phantasy Star Crew didn't want this to happen even once a decade. This was a massive undertaking and extremely pro-consumer, as there are still many PSO2 accessories and emotes I see people use to this very day. This single decision would begin the turbulent development of PSO2's sequel codenamed Reboot. But before we go further, we need to talk about PSO2 itself, because 2017 and 2018 were very influential for the direction of the reboot. Mainly, we have to talk about the infamous 5th episode and these 3 gentlemen. Let's start out with Satoshi Sakai. He has been part of the Phantasy Star franchise for the last 2 decades. For PSO2, he became the series producer and later became the brand director of New Genesis. Don't worry, I'll explain all these big scary terms in a second. Next, we have Yuya Kimura. He has been working on Phantasy Star since PSO Episode 1+2 and became the director for the first episode of PSO2 and series director for the rest of PSO2. For NGS, he was promoted to series producer. Lastly, we have Daiki Hamazaki. He became the main planner of Episode 3, and during Episode 4, he was co-directing. Nakamura-san, who was also the director of Episode 4, had been directing the PS4 version as well, so he needed the extra manpower. Hamazaki-san became the sole director of Episode 5, and later directed NGS version 1, acting as a series director since version 2. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let me explain the terms real quick. Granted, I am using the descriptions that are commonly associated with TV shows, but they do apply to PSO2. A director is a key figure that is responsible for the overall creative vision and direction of a project. They are there to ensure a product's quality, as well as alignment with the original agreed-upon concepts. Think of them as a conductor in an orchestra, guiding all the different parts to create a harmonious final product. As to why you'd use multiple directors for different episodes, the key reason is time. Basically, while one episode is being worked on, the next episode, under a different director, can enter pre-production, saving a lot of time in the process. A series director is a creative leader responsible for consistency within the look, tone, and quality across multiple episodes. While episode directors focus on individual episodes, the series director ensures continuity and overall vision of the entire series. In the case of PSO2, Kimura-san directed episode 1 and ensured that any future episode would match the tone, look, and quality set by the first episode. Same applies for Hamazaki-san and NGS version 1 and 2. A series producer is a key figure in production, responsible for the overall vision of the entire series. They ensure the series is produced to agreed-upon standards, within budget and on schedule. The series producer manages the teams, makes content decisions, and oversees all aspects of production, from pre-production through delivery. To call back to the previous conductor analogy, think of a series producer as a music composer, writing the music sheets that the conductor and orchestra then follow. Ultimately, they have the main responsibility of a series' success, as well as the team's failure. The final role I want to explain is the brand director. This is a senior-level executive who oversees a company's overall branding strategy, ensuring brand consistency and alignment with business objectives. They are responsible for shaping and maintaining the brand's image, messaging, and market position, working to enhance brand equity and drive brand growth. Now that we're all on the same page and we've introduced our major players, let's dive into the infamous 5th episode of PSO2.
聞こえるか？遥か異界より届く風のざわめき。ファンタシースターオンライン2。サービス開始から5周年。ついに国内450万 ID を突破。フリートゥープレイオンライン RPG の金字塔はあまたの新機軸を携えて驚愕の新章へと突入する。Episode 5.
Leading up to Episode 5, there was a lot of hype, but also few concerns. Hero was the first advanced class. It would not introduce any new weapons to the game, or be compatible with the subclass system. Instead, the intention was for everyone to graduate into Hero, kind of how in Final Fantasy XIV, a rogue graduates into a ninja at level 35. The subclass system was notorious for breaking the game, and many class skills were virtually useless compared to others, due to really poor balancing, and it was starting to become clear that rather than fix the issues, the devs would prefer to sweep them under the rug. But at the time, these were nothing but concerns, right? Hero did look powerful, but Episode 5 was meant to launch with a massive balance patch. Surely it would buff every class to be on par with the newcomer, right? This is foreshadowing. During the final week of Episode 4, the game held an item, Lab Boost campaign, which would allow players to enhance and affix their gear with greater ease and prepare for the upcoming adventures. Episode 5 launched, and with it came the first advanced class. Many of the balance changes were alright, but some choices were really controversial. Compound techniques were nerfed by sharing a cooldown timer with each other. Summoner's Marin got nerfed, and the balance adjustments to techniques forced people to recraft their customizations. Not a good start. However, ARCs didn't really have time to complain about any of that. Many ARCs hoarded a lot of bonus keys and EXP tickets to play hero and endgame content as soon as possible. It became quickly evident just how broken Hero really is. Players were justifiably confused about the power discrepancy, but the devs assured that Hero performs as expected. Needless to say, people who upgraded their equipment for their favorite class felt betrayed. While the idea of a class you'd upgrade into isn't bad, Hero only covered 3 of the 18 weapon types, so the majority of players, when switching over to Hero, couldn't use their weapons. They just invested millions of Masita into. Buster quests were not available on launch. These came 2 weeks later, alongside the new story taking us to the parallel dimension of Omega. However, it quickly became evident that regular classes were not performing so well in this new type of content. Hero was not only strong, you see, it also had an unprecedented amount of mobility, and even normal attacks dealt a stupidly large amount of damage. Even if you ran out of PP, you were still in the fight, whereas regular classes were not. Because of this, a trend quickly developed among the players, where if you wanted to participate in the main match Buster quests, people would demand for you to use Hero. This was only the beginning of the problems. The newly implemented multi-block matchmaking system was extremely buggy. 630-chan was particularly punishing by lowering your score necessary to participate in main match Buster quests. To add a cherry on top, there were issues with the story content. For Episode 5, the devs had the genius idea of replacing story quests with Buster quests, but because people wouldn't show up for them, people couldn't progress in the story. I may come off as negative here, but I really don't mean to. If Buster quests were executed well, they would be one of the best quest types in the game, uniting both endgame and new players under a single quest type, ensuring there is always someone to play with, which is something previous quest types suffered from a lot. Once you were done leveling, there was no reason to ever participate in normal, hard, or very hard content. As a result, a lot of the quest counter became a vacant wasteland. Buster Quests tried to offer a solution by replacing traditional difficulties with grades, and giving endgame players a reason to play lower grades. The execution, however, left a lot to be desired. Shortly after the release of Buster Quests, it was time for PSO2 Station, the live broadcast showing upcoming content. However, if you watch the Nico Nico version of the broadcast, you'd quickly realize the live keyword, a feature Nico Nico provides, was flooded with people asking for an apology. Instead of addressing the matter, the word apology was simply put into a filter. Needless to say, this did little to calm people down or assure that the feedback is being taken into consideration. On September 2nd, it was time for ARC's Live, a chill hangout live stream where the devs and hosts play PSO2 together with the community. On this live stream, it would be announced that the devs plan a sizable balance patch for regular classes at the end of October. However, it was mentioned that even with these adjustments, Hero would remain stronger, because that's part of the theme of Episode 5. Yikes. Another feature of Nico Nico is to display live satisfaction ratings of the stream, and this one had really low ratings. To add insult to injury, 2 weeks after that live streams, PSO2 Cloud was announced for the Nintendo Switch. This felt very tone-deaf to the player base. Instead of working on improving the class balance, fixing bugs with the matchmaking, or at least giving any type of apology, the devs announced the game coming to yet another platform. At this point, the players felt like the devs weren't listening to them at all, so they took any chance they could to share their frustration. The very next day, a Game Maniacs interview with Sakai-san was published. The interview talked mostly about the recent offline events, but it also reiterated that Hero, as an advanced class, is meant to be stronger than regular classes. Infuriated, ARCs began flooding the comment sections. Other PSO2 articles weren't spared either. The Game Maniacs editors panicked and took the interview private without communicating with SEGA. SEGA promptly requested to make the interview public again. This mounting pressure started to be too much for the series producer to simply ignore. 5 days after the Game Maniacs incident, Sakai-san took to his official PSO2 blog to make an apology. He swallowed his pride and admitted that making a single class stronger than the other 9 classes and balancing the content around said single class was a mistake and promised that their class balance policy will change for the future. Those words were followed up by actions. 3 days after the apology, during the Tokyo Games Show broadcast, Sakai, Kimura, and Hamazaki announced that the balance adjustments, which were slated for late October, would instead come before the end of September. Keep in mind, September was almost over, so this level of swiftness was unprecedented for Phantasy Star Crew. While these changes wouldn't put normal classes on par with advanced classes, the devs did promise they'd continue buffing regular classes, as well as keep monitoring player feedback through frequent surveys.
We had some reflections on episode 5, and we wanted to brush up the classes that players had strong feelings about, allowing them to enjoy them in a new way. In the process of brushing up, we were very conscious of provided feedback on what was well received by successor classes.
This quote fascinates me. It really makes me wonder if NGS had launched exclusively with successor classes, had the episode 5 backlash never happened. Anyway, let's fast forward to 2018. By this point, the devs have proven that they took class balancing seriously again, and player trust slowly began to rebuild. What could possibly go wrong? SEGA is the largest conference in Japan promoting the development of technology and the exchange of knowledge and information among professionals. Many prominent developers participated in 2018, one of which was Satoshi Sakai. When given the opportunity to speak, he made various problematic comments, saying that running an MMO is like running a country. Usually, this is a pretty normal take. After all, Naoki Yoshida said the same thing once when talking about his MMO. However, Sakai's approach to that metaphor was that everyone always complains about their government, and that the pressure he feels from that is sometimes too much for him. Additionally, he said he values the opinions of people who show up to life events more than those who only share their opinions online. Even though he's in charge of an online game, these comments caused a huge uproar in the Japanese PSO2 community, and even people from outside became aware of these comments. This incident caused Sakai to be nicknamed King Sakai of the PSO2 Kingdom, and his name rose to the second rank of Nico Nico's yearly search rankings. 3 days after the GATEC conference, Sakai took the opportunity of the PSO2 station to apologize directly to all of the viewers. But by then the damage was done, and the bubbly PSO2 station following the apology felt very tone-deaf. 2018 fell way below SEGA's financial expectations for digital goods income, largely blamed on PSO2 underperforming. Kimura-san, Hamazaki-san, and Sakai-san stopped appearing during PSO2 live streams the following year. And that ends the episode 5 chapter in PSO2's history. Kimura-san and Hamazaki-san got heat purely because they were associated with Sakai-san. Try as I might, I couldn't find any specific example of either of these two saying something offensive. All the bad PR really just came because of Sakai. My older viewers might remember me quoting something Hamazaki-san supposedly said in regards to Hero. Truth to be told, I was simply repeating something I was told by someone else. I haven't actually looked for that quote myself. That was very sloppy research on my end. I'm really sorry for spreading misinformation back then. For this video, I've read a couple Japanese blogs, and nobody mentions anything notable about Hamazaki-san specifically.
There were many players who supported me, but those people saw the players who were disgusted with me, and it had a negative effect on their motivation. I don't mind being criticized myself, but I would like players to get along with each other.
The leadership at Phantasy Star Crew knew their appearance negatively impacted people's enjoyment of the game, so they decided to hide. This much is explained on Sakai's official PSO2 blog. Episode 6 was directed by Yoshioka-san, a newcomer who is really good at the game himself and loves gunblades. Luster was likely added as a result of his request. Although the game had some questionable design decisions during Episode 6, overall, players still looked back fondly at that time period of PSO2. 2019 was a very slow year though. Advanced classes were renamed to successor classes, and Phantom was able to be used as a subclass for regular classes. Due to feedback the devs received from Hero, the first signs of something big going on were beginning to show, as Sega Sapporo Studios' hiring page was updating very frequently. In hindsight, we know that Sega was hiring to prepare for New Genesis, but at the time people speculated it might be because of the global service launching, thanks to an unexpected reveal during Xbox's E3 conference.
premiere.
The game was finally leaving Japan, and the devs no longer infuriated the players with their unfiltered comments. What could possibly go wrong?
First of all, a major change occurred shortly before the launch of the NGS service. The declaration of a state of emergency due to the corona outbreak made it necessary to switch the entire team to work from home. We managed to get a system in place that allowed us to continue the PSO2 service while also developing NGS. But because we were not accustomed to remote development, we were unable to progress according to schedule.
PSO2 was in its final year. The PS Vita support ended, and the game slowly began developing a proper endgame. PSO2 launched globally and had the monumental task of speedrunning 9 years worth of content in time for the eventual release of NGS, the first teaser of which we'd see in March of that year. I love this trailer so much! Luster looked insane for a class with just a single weapon. And what's this? Not episode 7? What does that mean? Well, we wouldn't have to wait long, because in July, during the Xbox Games Showcase, we'd get our answer. And with that, the reboot was fully unveiled as PSO2 New Genesis, a new beginning for the aging MMO. People were excited. The graphics looked fantastic, and the combat looked incredibly smooth and flashy. The biggest concern people had at the time was whenever their character data would carry over. Overall, the reveal of the game garnered universal acclaim. Things looked a little bit more different on global servers, however, since we haven't even gotten episode 4 yet, nor a launch on a functional PC storefront. Knowing PSO2 will be replaced in 1 year certainly slowed down some hype.
In PSO2, people had the impression that certain actions were difficult, such as using photon arts to move at maximum speed. NGS was developed with the aim of creating simple controls that anyone can enjoy. As for game speed, we have made adjustments so that photon dash is the fastest way to move. In the version under development, the game was faster overall, but the difficulty level was too high, so we settled on the current speed. I played the version in development, and yes, it seemed much faster than other games. Players who were used to PSO2's luster may have had no problems with it, but it was revised because it was difficult for new players.
NGS brought in many changes. The perfect attack system was removed, an idea the devs have played around with since episode 4. I can see why they'd think that such a system is too punishing for casual players, but personally, I'd have preferred if they kept it. Many photon arts have been pruned in order to reduce button bloat. As Hiro Arai explained it, normal attacks on normal classes were largely only used for PP recovery. Though let's be honest, we took every opportunity available to skip using normal attacks with PP battery weapons. So in NGS, the idea was to make normal attacks part of the optimal DPS rotation, something even successor classes had going on for themselves. This not only made for a more involved gameplay rotation, but also improved PP economies, making it far less likely you'd run out. Some photon arts became skills and/or weapon actions. For example, Folk Raptor or Stylish Onslaught used to be photon arts in PSO2. NGS had a new photon dash feature, so Travel PA became obsolete. For techniques, since uncharged techniques were virtually useless in PSO2, the devs decided to have different techniques perform, depending if you charge or don't charge the technique. Phantasy Star Zero also did this to consolidate buttons on the Nintendo DS. All of this pruning allowed the devs to make normal classes play with the same level of comfort as successor classes did in PSO2. Due to a very low clear rate in PSO2, the devs decided to have a much smaller scope for the story in NGS, focusing largely on environmental storytelling and taking place on a singular planet, similarly to the original PSO. The story was outsourced to Gecko, Inc., a reputable writing firm in Japan who's involved in many games throughout the industry. NGS wasn't Gecko's first rodeo with the series either, as they also worked on PSO2 ES Season 3 before. The graphics saw an incredibly high jump in quality. NGS uses Silicon Studios' Enlighten middleware to power its global illumination in real time, allowing for a very beautiful day and night cycle, as well as a weather system. I personally really enjoy the soft storytelling that adds to mining rig defense quests, if they happen to align with the switch from day to night, or vice versa. After several beta tests, PSO2 New Genesis finally launched on June 9th. However, the game was clearly not ready to launch. Several systems from PSO2 were not implemented, and a few things on the roadmap had to be delayed. To add to this, the devs had another problem, one they couldn't have predicted. New Genesis was meant to reduce a lot of the tedium of PSO2 and make the game stress-free to play. However, due to recent events, a lot of people were locked up in their homes with nothing better to do than to play video games. NGS did not offer enough for those content-hungry players.
In 2021, our goal was to get NGS into service as soon as possible. The major updates of PSO2 had already been completed, and there were no new elements to add to the game. So the only way to continue the service was to launch NGS. However, due to the reasons mentioned above, we were not able to proceed with the development as we had hoped, which caused a lot of inconvenience to players. It took us some time to get used to the new development system, but another reason was that we were not able to utilize the know-how we had gained from PSO2 as much as we thought we could with the new graphics and content style of NGS. However, around the time of the distribution of Retum, we gradually became accustomed to the remote development system and development for NGS, and we felt that we were able to speed things up a bit.
The development team has shifted compared to PSO2. Sakai-san is still involved, although he's no longer the series producer, now acting as a brand director. The new series producer was none other than Yuya Kimura, though due to the poor state of NGS at launch, he was too busy to make any public appearances, relying solely on the official navigator, Hiro Arai, to communicate with players. Hamazaki-san, meanwhile, acted as the director, as well as world part director of version 1. You can clearly see their influences in the game. The naming scheme, as well the overall one-planet structure, is very similar to the original PSO, which was Kimura's first project in the series. Similarly, you can tell that Hamazaki is a big fan of the original Phantasy Star games. Not only were Phantasy Star characters represented in Episode 5, throughout Halpha there are several spots on the map where you can listen to the old Phantasy Star music, if you can find them.
So, since we had delivered the volume of content that we had originally planned, and had been able to respond to some of the initial requests, we decided that it would be a good idea for me to directly communicate with you in preparation for the new start of version 2. Of course, the team had its own concerns, but this was the result of a comprehensive decision. I received a warmer welcome than I had expected. I was also relieved to hear voices like, "Welcome back," and I'm glad to see you are doing well.
Many Japanese players welcomed Kimura-san and Hamazaki-san back. In fact, some people noted their absence as the reason why they didn't enjoy NGS's early years as much as they did with PSO2. Back then, PSO2 was one of the first games to have such an open and casual dialogue with the developers. It felt fun being part of that community. NGS is only recently trying to bridge that gap. As of the time of writing of this video, the devs plan to hold their first live headline since launch. Hero Arai stated that the reason headlines are pre-recorded is to ensure both global and Japanese players receive information at the same time. It's not a budget constraint, but it felt very distant from what Japanese players were used to. There were also more casual events like the recent ARC's Friendship Caravan, where the devs shared some player stats and held game competitions. Despite everything I mentioned about Sakai's slip-ups, people still look fondly at his achievements with the game. The guy is a lovable goofball, and while he is responsible for the game's shortcomings and some bizarre statements, he's also responsible for crafting one of my favorite online games in the past decade, with Kimura and Hamazaki carrying that torch forward. And that's the key takeaway I want you to take from this video. I started this project to prove a point. That point being that the global community's hatred for Hamazaki-san is misplaced. But I don't want you guys simply to shift the blame on someone else. Every mistake is a group effort mistake. Every success is a group effort success. The leadership may be responsible, but they're just people. People with passion for what they're doing, and that passion can be seen in the final product if you're willing to search for it. You may disagree with some of their decisions, but that doesn't mean that they have no passion for what they are doing. It simply means that we're all just human, and now that you know the history, and what the Episode 5 backlash really was about, I'll leave you with one final quote from the developers.
Some players are very particular about their role-playing, such as, "My character only carries a rod," or "My character definitely carries a sword." I think that some players are very particular about their role-playing. As a developer, I would like players to be able to play with many different classes, but the current policy of NGS is to allow players to play with the character settings that are important to them. We are thinking about how to make the game more enjoyable for everyone. We had initially discussed the possibility of releasing a new class, but even the popular Slayer class had a usage rate of 20 to 30% at the time of distribution. We concluded that it would be better to update all classes that players already play with the addition of EX styles.
あ、待って、私のチェリーお願いやらせてお願い。あ、最高。
しくってるのに取れた。よし。
マルスに乗りましょうね。
マルスに乗る？
はい、マルスに乗る。周りのね、周りのやつ取ったらマルスに乗れる。
よし、乗ったよ。
あ、来るかよ。扉止めて根源への道を開け放って。あ、
待って、ね、お願いチェリーさせて。
間違えて回避した。ちょっと待ってね。もう一回開くるか。もう一回開くるか使うような。開くるかよ。はい。してくんないかな。
ワークス交代の時もこんな感じ？
あ、こんな感じ。なんかね、
混乱してる。
そう、なんかね、結構でもこんなにねバラバラはあんまりないから。
あ、バラバラあんまり
みんなで行こうぐらいな感じだね。
このなんかじゃんじゃんのあれ
はい。
指の設定変えるの忘れててさ。
かわいい。いいね。
いいね。はい、そして。チャイナ。
うますぎでしょ。
おめでとう。 が死んで優位に来てたあれ私が戦い
これですねトゥードゥパンチング
ここだったんだ。これでかいんです。これいいですよ。木村さん、前に。どこ取ってるんですか。なんでそこなんですか。いいぞ。もうちょっと下が。いいぞ。
この辺のね尻のねラインがちょっとおかしい。そう。おかしい。やっぱりミーデ先生は変態だなっていうのがある。
いや